Lieutenant Marcus Thorne went through his pre-battle routine with practiced efficiency. Check ammunition, test communication systems, mentally review tactical plans, don the armor piece by piece. He'd been assigned quarters in the Serath royal stronghold during this critical defensive campaign. Close coordination with alien allies required proximity to their command structure. The chambers were more luxurious than anything he'd experienced in military service, but right now he just needed to prepare. Marcus stripped off his standard-issue shirt, preparing to don the armor plating that would protect his torso during the engagement. The Serath environmental controls kept the stronghold warm, and he took a moment to stretch before beginning the awkward process of securing armor sections. He didn't realize Queen Lyra herself had entered the outer chamber of his quarters. She'd come to discuss last-minute tactical adjustments before the battle, normal practice for her to coordinate with human advisors directly. Her attendants had opened the door quietly, and she'd begun to enter when she noticed Marcus was in the connected chamber, visible through the partially open doorway. Professional courtesy should have prompted her to wait or announce herself. But she caught sight of his back just as he reached for his armor plating, and she froze completely. Marcus's back bore an elaborate marking. What he'd always understood as a decorative tattoo he'd gotten years ago during shore leave on a distant human colony. Geometric patterns in black ink, covering most of his upper back between his shoulder blades. He'd liked the aesthetic when the artist showed him the design, abstract, angular, distinctive. To him, it was meaningless decoration, a memory of a port visit and a decision made on impulse. To Queen Lyra, it was impossible proof of a legend she'd been raised to believe but never expected to witness. Her attendants noticed immediately when the Queen went absolutely still, her eyes fixed on the human officer's back, her expression shifting from surprise to shock to something approaching awe mixed with fear. Marcus noticed the sudden silence in the outer chamber. He turned, saw the Queen and her attendants through the open doorway, and immediately felt embarrassment flush through him. Being caught half-dressed in front of alien royalty was not proper protocol. "Your Majesty, I apologize," he said quickly, reaching for his armor plating to cover himself. "I didn't realize you'd arrived. Give me just a moment." "Stop." The Queen's voice cut through his fumbling with command that made him freeze mid-motion. "Your back, the marking, where did you get it?" Marcus was confused by the intensity in her tone. "It's just a tattoo, Your Majesty. I got it years ago on a colony world, New Hebron. It's not military insignia or anything significant, just something I thought looked interesting." "Show me again." "It wasn't a request. Remove the armor plating you've attached. I must see it clearly." Marcus hesitated, bewildered by her reaction, but the Queen's expression left no room for argument. He removed the sections he'd just secured and turned, fully exposing his back. Queen Lyra approached, closer than protocol usually permitted between royalty and military advisors, and examined the marking with intensity that made Marcus deeply uncomfortable. He could feel her presence behind him, could hear her controlled breathing as she studied the tattoo. Her fingers traced the air just above his skin, following the patterns without quite touching, as if the marking was sacred or dangerous or both. "Impossible," she whispered, and Marcus heard genuine shock in her voice. "The prophecy said there would be visible proof. We've been searching for centuries, and you're human. You're not even of our species, yet you bear the Shal'tara." Marcus had no idea what she was talking about. "Your Majesty, I don't understand." The Queen stepped back abruptly, her composure returning though her eyes remained fixed on him with new and unsettling intensity. "Lieutenant Thorne, you will attend me in the throne room immediately after the battle. This matter supersedes our military coordination. You have questions, I'm certain, but answers must wait until we are not facing imminent combat." She moved toward the door, then paused. "For now, wear your armor, fight well, and survive this engagement. We will speak after victory is secured. What I saw on your back changes everything." She left, her attendants following in bewildered silence, and Marcus was left standing half-armored and completely confused about what had just happened. Marcus finished donning his armor mechanically, his mind racing. The Queen had called his tattoo Shal'tara and mentioned prophecy and searching for centuries. She'd looked at him like he was something significant, something she'd been looking for. But it was just a tattoo. Just a design he'd gotten on impulse during shore leave 5 years ago from a human artist working out of a port colony shop. Wasn't it? He tried to push the confusion aside and focus on the battle ahead. There would be time for answers later, assuming he survived the engagement. The battle was brutal but ultimately successful. Marcus coordinated human and Serath forces with practiced efficiency, his confusion about the Queen's reaction temporarily forgotten in the immediacy of combat operations. But after victory was secured and casualties assessed, the summons came. Queen Lyra requested his immediate presence in the throne room for private audience. The throne room was nearly empty, just Queen Lyra seated on her ceremonial chair, one elderly Serath advisor who appeared to be some kind of scholar or priest based on his robes, and guards maintaining respectful distance. Marcus approached and offered proper military courtesy, but the Queen waved off formality. "This is not a military briefing, Lieutenant Thorne. What we must discuss goes far beyond tactical coordination." She gestured, and the elderly advisor stepped forward, carrying an ancient text, actual physical book rather than data storage, suggesting significant age and reverence. "The marking on your back," Queen Lyra began without preamble, "is called Shal'tara in our oldest language. It appears in prophecies and legends that predate even our recorded history. According to sacred texts that have guided my dynasty for over 3,000 years, the one who bears this mark is fated to be bound to the royal bloodline, to become part of our succession, to ensure the continuation of our people through a union that bridges worlds." Marcus tried to process this. "Your Majesty, with all respect, it's just a tattoo. I got it at a port colony from a human artist. It was a design I liked, geometric patterns that I thought looked interesting. It has nothing to do with Serath prophecy. The design is not from any human culture," the elderly advisor said, his voice carrying the weight of deep scholarship. "What you perceive as geometric pattern is actually ancient Serath script, written in a form that hasn't been used in over 3 millennia. It spells out the prophecy itself, the words we have studied and debated for generations." He opened the ancient text, revealing pages covered in symbols that made Marcus's stomach drop. They matched the patterns on his back almost exactly. "From beyond the stars, bearing the mark of binding, comes one who will join blood and ensure continuity," the advisor read. "Not of our kind, yet bound to our fate. The marked one will appear unknowing, revealed at the moment of our greatest need, and through their union with the crowned one shall the line persist when all other paths fail." Marcus stared at the text, then at the advisor, then at the Queen. That has to be coincidence. I got this tattoo 5 years ago from a human artist named Chen on New Hebron. He said it was based on ancient Earth geometric patterns that he'd adapted. He never mentioned Serath culture or alien prophecy. The prophecy explicitly states that the marked one would not know the significance of what they bear, Queen Lyra said. That they would carry Shal'tara unknowingly until revealed at the proper time. This is not coincidence, Lieutenant. This is fulfillment of ancient promise. Even if the pattern matches, and I'm not fully convinced it does, that doesn't mean I'm part of some prophecy. Prophecies aren't real. They're just old stories that people interpret to fit whatever happens. The prophecy has been accurate in every other prediction it made, the advisor said firmly. It predicted the fall of the northern kingdoms 300 years before the event occurred, describing the circumstances in detail that seemed impossible until they manifested exactly as written. It predicted the arrival of species from beyond our system decades before first contact, including specific descriptions of ships and technology that matched human vessels when you arrived. It predicted that our bloodline would face extinction unless joined with the marked one, and our bloodline is facing precisely that threat. Queen Lyra's expression was controlled, but Marcus could see tension beneath the royal composure. I am the last of the direct royal line, Lieutenant Thorne. I have no siblings, no close cousins who can carry our bloodline forward. Our succession law requires direct descent from the primary line, a law written millennia ago and foundational to our political stability. She paused, and Marcus sensed she was about to reveal something deeply personal. I am also unable to bear children through normal means, a genetic condition that affects our royal line, the price of millennia of careful breeding to maintain certain traits. Medical intervention has attempted to address this condition, but Serath physicians have concluded that natural conception is impossible for me. Your Majesty, I'm sorry, but I still don't understand what my tattoo has to do with your succession crisis. The prophecy states explicitly that the marked one can father children with our bloodline despite all other impossibilities, the advisor said. That the union between the marked one and the queen will produce heirs when all other attempts have failed. That this is the only path to ensuring our continuity. The full implication hit Marcus like physical force. You're saying this prophecy claims I'm supposed to, with you, to produce heirs for your throne. That's insane. The prophecy claims you are fated for this purpose, Queen Lyra said, and her voice was steady despite discussing matters that would normally be handled with elaborate diplomatic courtesy. Whether you believe in fate or predestination, my people do. My advisors have been searching for someone bearing Shal'tara for generations. Every alien species we've encountered, we've looked. Every diplomatic contact, every military alliance, we've examined individuals hoping to find the mark. And now you appear, a human military advisor working closely with our forces, bearing the exact marking described in our oldest texts. This is crazy, Marcus said, shaking his head. I'm a combat officer. I coordinate tactical operations. I'm not some prophesied figure meant to father alien royal heirs. Nevertheless, you bear the Shal'tara, the queen said. And word is already spreading through my court. Too many saw my reaction when I discovered your marking. My advisors are even now convening to discuss the implications. You cannot simply dismiss this as coincidence or mistake. My people have been waiting for this moment for centuries. They will see you as fulfillment of ancient promise, whether you accept that role or not. Marcus requested time to process what he'd learned, time that Queen Lyra granted, though she made clear the matter couldn't be ignored indefinitely. Too many advisors had already heard about the Shal'tara discovery, and expectations were building. Marcus spent the next 3 days in frantic research. He contacted New Hebron Colony, trying to track down the artist Chen who'd given him the tattoo. He discovered that Chen had died 2 years ago, but his apprentice provided access to his design archives. The geometric pattern Marcus had chosen was indeed in the archives, but Chen's notes indicated he'd adapted it from ancient symbols collected in a database of alien cultural artifacts compiled during early human expansion. The symbol had been catalogued as origin unknown, possibly from early alien contact. Design suggests mathematical or linguistic meaning, meaning the design could have originated from Serath contact with human explorers decades or even centuries ago, then been preserved in cultural databases without anyone understanding its significance. Marcus reviewed historical accounts of Serath prophecies. To his deep discomfort, he found that the advisor had been telling the truth. Major Serath prophecies had been remarkably accurate about large-scale historical events. The fall of kingdoms, the arrival of new species, technological developments, all predicted in texts written centuries before the events occurred. How or why the prophecies were accurate remained debated by scholars, but their track record was undeniable. He learned more about Queen Lyra's situation. She was relatively young by Serath standards, perhaps equivalent to early 30s in human terms, but already facing intense pressure about succession. The genetic condition preventing natural conception was confirmed in medical records available to Alliance personnel. Without an heir, the Serath political structure would face crisis. Their monarchy had provided stable governance for millennia, but succession law required direct descent. No heir meant no legitimate successor, which meant fractured factions competing for power. Civil war was not just possible but probable. The strategic implications for the human-Serath alliance were equally serious. Serath were valuable allies against common enemies. Their collapse into civil war would destabilize the entire sector and likely force humans to choose sides in a conflict that would kill millions. On the third day, Marcus requested private meeting with Queen Lyra, not in the formal throne room, but in the palace gardens where conversation could be more personal. "I've done research," Marcus said without preamble. "I understand your succession crisis is real. I understand your prophecies have historical accuracy that can't be easily dismissed. But Your Majesty, I can't just accept that I'm destined to become your consort and father your heirs because I have a tattoo that matches some ancient design. That's not how humans think about fate or destiny." "I understand your resistance," Lyra said, and her voice had lost some of its regal formality. "I too struggle with this prophecy. When I was young, I imagined I would choose my consort freely, would marry for political alliance or personal affection as my ancestors did. Instead, I face a genetic condition that makes natural succession impossible, and a prophecy that claims my only hope is a human I've known for mere weeks, bound by nothing, but an ancient mark he doesn't even understand." She moved to sit on a stone bench, gesturing for Marcus to join her. "But I cannot ignore what I saw on your back. The Shal'tara is not merely similar to our ancient texts, it is identical down to details that have been lost to our own culture for millennia. Details that no human could have known to replicate, because they exist only in texts kept in our most secure archives. Even if the mark is genuinely from ancient Serath contact, that doesn't prove the prophecy is true about me personally. Maybe it's just an old symbol that got transmitted through cultural exchange. Maybe your ancestors were wrong about its significance." "Perhaps," Lyra conceded, "but I cannot risk my entire people on perhaps. If the prophecy is true and I reject it, our bloodline ends and our empire collapses into civil war that could kill millions. If I accept it and the prophecy proves false, I have made a political marriage to a respected human military officer, something that would strengthen our alliance regardless of prophetic fulfillment. The risk-benefit calculation favors accepting the prophecy's claims." Marcus appreciated her pragmatic analysis even as he resisted the conclusion. "And what about what I want? What about my choice in this?" "That is the question I struggle with most," Lyra admitted, and Marcus heard genuine conflict in her voice. "The prophecy speaks of binding and fate, as if your participation is inevitable. My advisors interpret it as predetermined, that you will fulfill the prophecy regardless of your initial resistance. But I do not wish to be the kind of ruler who forces duty upon unwilling subjects, even when that duty might save millions of lives." She looked at him directly, and Marcus saw vulnerability beneath the royal bearing. "I am offering you choice, Marcus Thorne. Not false choice between compliance and punishment, but genuine choice. If you refuse this path, I will not imprison you or harm your career. You may return to your human commanders and resume your normal duties. I will find another way to address the succession crisis, even if that way is less certain than the prophecy promises. But I ask that before you decide, you consider not just what you want personally, but what your refusal would cost. Consider the millions of Serath who would die in civil war if our succession fails. Consider the alliance between our peoples that would crumble without stable Serath leadership. Consider whether sometimes the right choice is the hard one, the one that demands personal sacrifice for greater good." Marcus sat in silence, wrestling with the weight of what she was asking. Finally, "You're putting enormous pressure on me while claiming to offer free choice." "I know," Lyra said quietly, "and I'm sorry, but I must be honest about the stakes. I won't lie to you about what hangs in the balance. If that honesty makes your choice harder, I accept that burden." Marcus spent another week wrestling with the decision. He was torn between his instinct to reject what felt like manipulation through prophecy and his recognition that Lyra's assessment was accurate. Refusing could have catastrophic consequences for millions. He spoke with his human commanding officers, who were fascinated by the prophecy implications and concerned about Marcus being pressured. But they also recognized the strategic value of deeper integration with Serath royalty. The decision, they made clear, was his. Marcus also found himself thinking about Queen Lyra herself. During their conversations, he'd come to respect her intelligence, her pragmatic approach to impossible situations, and her genuine attempt to offer him choice despite the pressure. She was carrying impossible burdens with grace and trying to balance duty to her people with respect for his autonomy. One evening, Marcus requested final private audience. They met again in the gardens, where formality felt less oppressive. "I've made my decision," Marcus said. "I'm not agreeing because I believe in prophecy or destiny. I don't know if the Shal'tara actually means what your texts claim. But I do know that your people need stable succession, our alliance needs strengthening, and you need help carrying an impossible burden. I'm agreeing because I choose to help. Because the cost of refusal is too high, because I've come to respect you and your people, and because sometimes the right choice is the one that serves something larger than personal comfort." He paused. "I'm choosing this freely, Lyra. Not because prophecy demands it, but because it's the right thing to do." Relief was visible in the Queen's expression. "You understand this will require formal union according to our customs. That you would become part of our royal line, subject to our succession laws and cultural expectations. I understand. I'm choosing this with full knowledge of what it means." "Then I accept your choice with profound gratitude, Marcus Thorne." Lyra's voice carried emotion beneath the formal words. "But I want you to know, I do not see you as merely a tool for succession. Whatever the prophecy claims, I want to build genuine partnership with you. You will be more than a means to produce heirs. You will be my consort in truth, someone I respect and, I hope, will come to trust and care for as person rather than just as prophetic fulfillment." They began the formal bonding process. Serath marriage customs were elaborate, involving ceremonies that publicly acknowledged Marcus as bearer of the Shal'tara and consort to the Queen. The announcement created waves through both Serath and human populations. Some celebrated the deepening alliance. Others questioned whether ancient prophecy should drive modern political decisions. The medical aspects were more clinical. Serath physicians worked with human doctors to navigate the biological incompatibilities between species, using advanced reproductive technology to attempt what natural conception couldn't achieve. Months passed. Marcus adapted to his role as royal consort, discovering it involved far more than succession duties. He became trusted advisor on human relations, continued coordinating military operations, and gradually became genuine partner to Lyra in ways neither had anticipated. They discovered unexpected compatibility. Marcus's pragmatic military thinking complemented Lyra's political acumen. His outsider perspective helped her see solutions to problems that Serath tradition had obscured. Her knowledge of her people helped him understand the weight of decisions affecting millions. 6 months after their formal union, Serath physicians confirmed what many had hoped but few truly expected. Lyra was pregnant. The medical procedures had worked. Against all prior predictions and despite the genetic condition that should have made it impossible, she was carrying a viable child. The prophecy's accuracy became undeniable. Marcus bore the Shal'tara, he'd united with the Queen, and their union was producing an heir when all other attempts had failed. But by that point, neither Marcus nor Lyra particularly cared whether prophecy had driven their union. They'd built something genuine from the strange beginning, partnership based on mutual respect, trust developed through shared challenges, and affection that had grown despite the pressure of destiny and political necessity. Years later, when asked about the moment Queen Lyra had frozen upon seeing his tattoo, Marcus would answer honestly, "I thought it was just decorative ink I'd gotten on impulse during shore leave. I had no idea it matched ancient Serath prophecy, or that it would bind me to alien royalty." When the Queen explained the Shal'tara and what it supposedly meant, my first instinct was to reject it as superstition and coincidence. He would pause, then continue. But I chose to accept, not because I believed in prophecy, but because refusing would have cost millions of lives and damaged an alliance that mattered. I chose because Queen Lyra showed me that sometimes doing the right thing means accepting burdens you never asked for. And I chose because she gave me genuine choice rather than demanding compliance. And when Queen Lyra was asked about the prophecy that had guided her dynasty for millennia, she would respond with equal honesty. "When I saw the Shal'tara on Marcus's back, I felt shock and awe and fear. My people had been searching for that mark for centuries, and here it was on a human who knew nothing of its significance. The prophecy seemed to be fulfilling itself exactly as written." She would smile slightly. "But prophecy brought us together. We built our actual partnership through choice and effort. Marcus didn't have to stay. He chose to help carry an impossible burden. And I chose to see him as partner rather than just as prophetic tool. Whatever the Shal'tara meant, what we built together was genuine because we both chose to make it so." Their daughter, a human Serath hybrid who inherited traits from both species, grew up knowing the story of the Shal'tara and the prophecy. But she also grew up seeing her parents work as genuine partners, seeing them build something real from what could have been just political obligation. The prophecy had been accurate in its specific predictions, but it said nothing about the partnership, trust, and eventual affection that Marcus and Lyra built through their own choices. That part wasn't destiny. It was two people deciding to make something meaningful from strange circumstances. The tattoo Marcus had gotten on impulse 5 years earlier had indeed changed his life completely. But not because prophecy demanded it, because he chose to honor what that marking represented to people who needed hope, chose to help someone carrying an impossible burden, and chose to build